Welcome, Daniel Nation, to our monthly podcast, the Daniel Report. It's good to have everybody back on our program tonight. And this evening, I have a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about the upcoming state convention for the Republican Party of Texas. And I'm going to be interviewing some candidates who are running for the chair position and the vice chair position for our state party. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them on. We have Dorinda Randall, who is the current vice chair of our party, and she's running for the chair position. And we have David Covey, who has been on our program before, and you know who he is. Ran against Dade Phelan for Speaker of the House down there in South Texas, and finally got rid of him. Took only
Yeah,
3 years, but he's gone finally. So,
he's
David,
gone.
thank you. And David is running for vice chair for the Republican Party. So, Dorinda, David, welcome to the Daniel Report.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, good to see you guys. So, Dorinda, since you're running for the chair, we're going to start with you. Just tell us a little bit about who you are for those viewers that are not familiar with your background and maybe what you've done as the vice chair, and just give us a minute or two of an introduction.
Okay, great. I'm a mother of three boys. I have the most beautiful grandchild in the world. My husband and I live out here in Waxahachie, and so I lived in Plano, where I built a club that the membership grew to over 500. I was very proud of the work that I did there, and I did it from being innovative and being a team builder, and in just motivating people to get busy. We were not a club that was a social club. We were a club that was full of action. And that's what people wanted in the community. They wanted to belong to something that was serving the community by getting people elected, good men and women elected. I've also been a staffer. I've been a staffer to Senator Bob Hall, then Senator Kim Paxton. And I also worked on the campaign for now HUD Secretary Scott Turner, and I've run many, many campaigns. Senator Angela Paxton, I ran her campaign, and I've done many school bond elections, school board elections, and city councils, and of course, state elections. So I've been very busy and very active. And then my husband and I moved from Plano. We moved to Houston. I stayed a precinct chair, became a precinct chair out there, and I did precinct chair work for a total of 12 years in Plano and here in Houston. And then we now moved back to Waxahachie to be pretty much the distance to all three of our boys is the end goal for us. And so we landed here. We absolutely love it here. Love the people of Ellis County, and it's just fantastic. So I think that was basically what you asked, right?
Yeah, great introduction. Yeah, thanks for letting us know who you are, and very nice to get to have you on our show and interview you for this position that you're running for. David, we're old friends. We go back to defeating Dade Phelan in House District 21, and I know you have a very impressive resume of different positions you've run for and served in. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here, Brandon. Really appreciate that. I've been going to state conventions since my parents took me. I was probably 10 years old when I started going to the first one, and I have served in many positions, many of the volunteer positions in the party. I'm a also married, have three kiddos, have one on the way, and so when all this came up for the chair position, we had just come off the Phelan race and we're enjoying a little bit of privacy and quiet time, but it was such an important time for Texas. And what I've always told people is no one can sit on the sideline, and so I had to apply that to myself. So I've been a precinct chair like Dorinda. I've also served as a county chair as SREC for Senate District 3, been a national delegate, and just I love the Republican Party because it has conservative values, it has a platform and principles that so much agree with my Christian conservative beliefs. And so I believe, and I think Dorinda completely agrees, that the Republican platform, and if we enact this, it really makes all Texans' lives better.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for introducing yourself, David, and good to have you back on the Daniel Report. So, Dorinda, let's start with why are you running? You've been the vice chair for how many years have you been vice chair?
2 years. Two
Okay, 2 years
years.
as vice
Yeah.
chair. So you've obviously seen the inner workings of the party, and something motivated you to jump in and say, I'm going to put my hat in the ring here to run for chair. So, what's your motivating factor and what do you want to accomplish?
Well, I've traveled to over 120 cities. It's probably even more than that right now, but I have listened to the people. I have seen what's happening. I've seen how county chairs have not been doing well. Precinct chairs are also struggling. And if we don't have strong counties, we're not going to have a strong Texas, because they are what make up the strength of your voter base in any county. And so we don't do we used to be very active with our county chairs, but when I saw what was going on and I listened to the people, and I listened to many people telling me to run because I have the ideas and I have the passion to make things happen. Um, but I didn't see that it was being listened to in my role in speaking with the chairman. And I thought, you know what? I have the desire to do something, but as a vice chair, your role is limited as to what you can do. So when I saw the landscape and I read the bylaws of things that I could be doing for the party, like raising money and getting more voter turnout, that is something that I'm going to work on with our county chairs. The county chairs also, I would like to do a county convention where I bring them all together and they learn about each other, what's worked, what hasn't. They are going to be grouped by similar sized counties, and so they can have a real conversation as to what they need from us as a partner, and then what do they learn from each other. And we are going to have a hotline when it comes to elections. And this I actually just stole from David. So David's like, man, that was my line. But David, when he was county chair, some of the things that he saw is that we need an election hotline, and that you can get in touch with somebody at the RPT. Right now, if you call the RPT, chances are somebody might not even answer. And right now, while we're in convention mode, we need somebody there. And so when it comes to elections, even triple fold there. And so I want to help with our county chairs. I want to help with the organization. Right now, we are not a customer service based organization, and we need to be. We need to service our county chairs, our precinct chairs, and the voters.
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, I mean, you've been in the party since you were 10 years old. So, what exactly is our party getting right? But what is it that you want to change? What are we getting wrong?
The Republican Party has to be for the grassroots, and that's the main thing. It should be a bottom up party. You know, all politics are local, and we need to be listening and serving and working and amplifying the voice of the grassroots. What I'm seeing is that the party is beginning to be focused on the elites in Austin, and we're hearing the echoes of messaging that's coming from top down, when in reality, the party should represent the delegates. It should represent the grassroots and amplify the voice and be bottom up. And so that's really what I want to make sure. You know, this is the last thing that the grassroots have, is a party that can be our voice, that can go to war and fight for the legislative priorities, that can take a stand on the platform. And so we need a party that is independent of the elected officials, independent of lobbyists and donors, and is working and serving the people of Texas, the voters, the delegates, the Republicans in this state. And that's really what attracted me to Dorinda. Beyond the fact that I've known her since we were both working for Bob Hall during his first term in the Texas Senate. But when I talked to her and I heard her plan, I heard her ideas, and I know that she's an incredibly hard worker. And she's not using this as a platform to run for Congress, to run for
Mm-mm.
the next thing. She's just a hard worker. And Texas RPT chair and vice chair should be working positions. They're not just figurehead. They're not just you go and look good and go to the meetings and go to expensive galas and things like that. It's meant to be a working position. You're talking to your people, talking to the SREC, to the county chairs, the precinct chairs, the volunteers, and you're listening and then letting their voices be amplified. So that's really what I think we need to be focused on, and the direction we need to get back to. That's what works.
Yeah.
And when we listen to the Austin elites, what happens is we lose races because the people disengage. And we lost our first race to a Democrat in the Senate since 1988. That happened this year. I mean, that's because we stopped listening to the grassroots. We also were outvoted by the Democrat primary voters because we didn't have a get out the vote program.
No.
And we weren't engaging and bringing in our volunteers and the grassroots. So you get me going. I start going.
I feel your passion, David. Thank you, man. And so that's a good segue for Dorinda for the next question. How do we increase Republican turnout in our primaries, especially in the suburban and urban areas? And what role could the party play, especially in contested primaries, for really turning that vote out?
Well, it is about messaging. And if you go to our social media for Texas GOP, there's no messaging there to motivate anybody. And what we've got to do is make sure that we get the messaging strong. One of the things that I did, I did an X call that I created. The chairman has taken over that, but I also did one on Rudder, Texas, for the X, for our X account. And what I did is I had young people on. We had 2,300 people listening, and the young people, they talk about the fact that we have got to give them the messaging that they need in order to have those conversations. And so we don't even do the messaging for ourselves to have those conversations when it comes to our family members. And that's what we've got to do, is just keep talking, because more conversation is what we need. But we need to be mired in truth, and we need to have the backup for it. When it comes to the Republican Party, we are a bottom up party. The Democrats are a top down, and we are increasingly getting in that direction, but we will not if we get in there on day one, because our messaging will be something that will be spread by county chairs, by our precinct chairs, by voters, because it's going to be so strong and so direct that that's what we need in order to beat Tallarico, in order to put the Democrats down. Because the thing is that we need to make sure that we have a strong enough Republican Party that anytime that the Democrats say, we're going to take over Texas, that they will be laughed at. Right now, when we saw what happened with the Tallarico and Crazy Pants, what we saw was that they outvoted us. And that's very scary for the Republican Party. We have to get rid of the apathy. We're not going to have Trump on the ballot this time. So that's why our messaging has got to be strong. We've got to come out strong for our candidates, because our Republican Party, the policies that we believe in, the principles that we believe in, help all Texans, not just Republicans, but all Texans. And that's what we've got to communicate when it comes to getting people motivated to get out to the polls.
I agree. So, David, you talked about building, the party for the grassroots, but you and I both know, I mean, the infighting is just legendary between what we would call the establishment and the grassroots, or the MAGA people. So, how do we bridge the divide? Does one party have to win and one party have to lose? Like, establishment's got to lose to the MAGA people, or the MAGA's got to compromise to the establishment people? How do we build this unity with this big tent we have to really force change in a good way for Texas?
Yeah, we've got to really focus on our platform and our principles. And those that agree with that, come on in and vote with us. That's how you connect with people and bridge the divide. We've got to be able to stand on those and articulate them clearly. And then also keep our aims on people like James Tallarico, who, I mean, they talk about our neighbors with uteruses having babies. They want to put men back in women bathrooms, and just the total woke progressiveness that they bring to the table. When we realize the danger there, then it helps us remember that, okay, this infighting, this is about being better, but we're all family. And so I think that's the message we have to bring. And it's okay for us to disagree on certain things, but at least we need to have a core agreement on what are the major issues, and that's given to us by the delegates at convention.
Yeah,
Well,
so
and
that's a great segue, Dorinda, for you. What is the core message that needs to come out of the state convention this year?
so, convention usually is about motivating everybody and getting them ready for midterms when it comes to a gubernatorial race, a gubernatorial year. And so that is what we have to do when it comes to this convention. There's so much energy behind David and I and our campaign because we are talking about what we have to do. We aren't talking about any one person or any of that. We are talking about getting people focused on what the goal is. And the goal is one thing that I wanted to add in regards to, the different sides and making sure that we get unified to get to the polls enough to vote for the midterms. The thing is if you have a great product that we all share the same principles, that we all share the same desire to see the Democrats kicked out of Texas, when you have a product that is strong, an RPT product that is strong, that is focused on customer service, that's focused on serving your county chairs, your precinct chairs, your elected officials, your candidates, and the youth. We have a strong program for the youth, for seniors, and we want to make sure that we answer the call to make sure that the RPT is the strongest that it can be. But that's by putting systems in place. Right now, there's no structure for the RPT. There is nothing. And so we need to make sure that we put the people in place. And David and I have met some amazing people across Texas that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work and make this the best and strongest party ever, because the Democrat policies are just disasters, and they put people's lives in danger. And I'm not just speaking hyperbole. They actually do. They voted. They spoke for 2 hours on the House floor, the Texas House floor, to have not Sharia law, but have what are they called? The people that come and sit in your house.
Oh, squatters?
Squatters. There you go. I can't even say it, much less be for it. But they voted for squatters to have rights to our houses for 2 hours. And then they also voted for men to be in women's restroom. Governor Abbott had to call a special session in order to get men out of our bathrooms because they argued until the dawn to make sure that they did. These are people that are not safe around our children and our community. And so we've got to get really strong Republicans to combat this crazy. And then we've also got to make sure that we have an RPT that stands up to the crazy and gets Texas to be the strongest that it can be. Because if you look at the states that have a strong Democrat Party, they're a mess. And if you look at our state, we've got to have a strong Republican Party in order to combat the Sharia law and all of it that they want to bring here.
Yeah. So, David, Dorinda talked about organizational strength, and you talked about an election hotline, which is a part of creating some organization. Where would you say our organization is weak, and what do y'all want to do to strengthen it? You're muted, buddy.
Let's see. One example that I would bring to the table is when you organize, you have to bring in the funds to put the right people in the right positions. And so that's what we want to do. We're going to bring in enough funds to put the right people in the right positions. One of the things that we're seeing right now with the convention, and this is what we've been told, is that the governor has stepped in because the party is not able to, and is paying the staffers that are organizing the convention, not with a donation to the party, but directly. And so I'm not faulting him. What I am saying is the party needs to be doing so well that we are an independent party, that we can hire staffers and we can put people in place to run our convention. Beyond that, we've got to get out the vote efforts. We need to open regional offices and have staff around the state who are engaging with local parties and organizations and building those organizations around in South Texas and West Texas and East Texas. One of the things that I've suggested too, and of course would have to be voted on, but is why do we have our headquarters in Austin where we don't always have the most volunteers? when you look at the state and you look at East Texas and West Texas and South Texas, the areas that really save the state and keep it red, that's where a lot of our volunteer base is. Let's put offices in those areas and let the staff, the volunteers come in and help us do work. Let's multiply the effort of the party. Let's not centralize. We need to decentralize and bring in people, give them work, because ultimately we have some of the most talented SREC, county chairs, precinct chairs that know so much, have so much knowledge, and have the ability to volunteer. And they want to. So let's put them to work doing valued activities that really have a payoff and help us win and defeat the Democrats.
I agree. We're going to have a segment on Get Out the Vote here. We'll talk about that in a second. But while we're talking about budget, Dorinda, what should the budget be for the state party of Texas? How much have we raised in the last 2 years? And how much should we be raising in the next 2 years?
So when the chairman ran, he said he was going to bring in $18 million a year. That is not true what he has done, but he has also said just recently that he brought 14 million into the party. These numbers don't line up with the TEC reports or the FEC reports. Now, what he could be talking about, he could be talking about the money that candidates raise. Candidates, like Ted Cruz or the National Senate Committee, when they put in money into the RPT for us to help with postage, and then that goes right back out. It never is something that hits the books because it's not there. And so the thing is that you can't take credit for somebody else's work. And I never will. And what I want to do is the RPT, it takes about $1.6 million to be able to run the operations of RPT. And what I want to see done is I did the grassroots club. And what I did is I brought it from $1,000 a month to $7,500 a month, which is about $96,000 a year. I'm the first vice chair to bring money to the party. But what I want to do with that is I want to have it be pitched to the delegates, that the delegates give the $15 a month, because that's where the most amount of skin in the game is happening, when they give all their volunteer efforts coming to convention and giving up their time and treasure there to come and stay, because it costs an average around $1,500 to $3,000 for them to come. So what I want to do is ask them to give $15 a month, but we have to have a great product. But even just with the delegates at $15 a month, at 7,900 delegates, we could bring in the $1.6 million to run just the operations. Anything over that will be used towards candidate resources, towards having booklets for precinct chairs, having training done, and having like David was talking about, the regional offices that we need to have. Those kind of things could help us do that. But first, what we have to do is we have to get our funding up when it comes to running the RPT operations. Right now, the TEC report shows that we have 67,000 on hand, $1.2 million coming in, and that all that those dollars coming in show to be for convention, which the convention costs 2.3 million, but our expenses on that same TEC report is $2.1 million. The math ain't mathin'. And the chairman keeps going to events where he says that he's bringing in 14 million. If that's the case, the first thing I'll do as chair, well, second thing, but I will come in there and I will look at those. I'll look for that $14 million. We will do an audit right away to find out where that $14 million is, because I have not seen it as vice chair, and neither has anyone from the SREC. But just because you say it is true doesn't mean it is. So I'd love it if we had $14 million. I wouldn't be running if we had $14 million, and neither would David. If we were a healthy financial party, there's no way that I would be running. But we are not. And I know that but we have to have the right product for people to believe in, to put the money into it.
Yeah. David, I've got a question for you coming up, but real quick, Dorinda, follow-up question. Historically, where has the bulk of our funding come from? Is it the large donors, the big whales that give the big checks, or is it the micro donors? What's the mix look like?
It is actually the big donors. We've gone to the same 2 to 3, depending on who's the chair. And so, we have great donors that actually do believe in the Republican Party, and I do want to go to them, and I will go to them, but I'm not going to rely on them. If we were doing the fundraising all the way through, then we wouldn't have to just go to one particular donor or 1 to 2 donors. We would have a huge plethora of people to tap into, but it is a grassroots organization, and we do need to have more grassroots giving to the party, so that way we can maintain being a grassroots organization. So and we can keep listening to the grassroots because they own the party. This is their party.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, David, question for you. This question is near and dear to my heart. Candidate support. You have been a candidate for state rep. I'm currently a candidate for state rep, although some would argue that my campaign hasn't started until we get through the general election because I'm not running till 2028. But that aside, you talked about field offices where we could do better support in the different, locations throughout Texas. What can we do to support candidates? First of all, raise up candidates or help grow candidates to run. But then number two, once they decide to run, to actually support them with finances or with, whatever we can do. What can we do better to help get better candidates running and really fund them to get into office?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, back to all politics are local, and we need to get local talent coming in. And one of the things that I'm want to do as vice chair is to bring in 100 young conservatives to run for local office. And we're gonna change the state by bottom up by having these conservatives come run for city council, school board, county commissioners, because these guys then filter up and become state reps and state senators and so on. And so we need to have them come in and get experience, build a conservative bench where we have talented people, and also that's going to bring in the next generation of young people and make sure that the party continues to grow and to dominate for the next 40 years. And so we got to help them. So when you come in, they need the resources, like you just said. You need to show them how do you raise money, where do you go, how do you report money, how do you do expenses, how do you get volunteers, how do you reach out to texting and do block walking, and trainings like that I think are very useful. Leadership Institute has done a lot of trainings that are really good, but I think our party could highlight those as well and do our own trainings that talk about basically candidate schools, so that people know how, because it's intimidating if you've not run for office. The other thing I like is to pair, young conservatives with SREC or those in office that are conservative, solid, rock solid conservatives, and let them shadow them and learn things. And so have some kind of intern program where we're bringing people in and giving them experience, because a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. And so make sure that we're answering questions and have that education available so that the candidates can come in and have that resource. We do, it is a primary. We have to remember the party is picking their choice to put up against the Democrats. And so we're not taking sides, but we're giving all sides the opportunity to have equal footing and know, how does a campaign even run?
Yeah, that's good. Dorinda, I'll come back to you in just one second. But David, one follow-up question for you. You ran a really great race against Dade Phelan, and you left a legacy because you forced him to spend money that he would have otherwise given to other candidates to win their races. And so we flipped a lot of seats in Texas because of you. And then now, of course, we've lost Dade Phelan as our speaker. We're so thankful for that. But if you could give a first-time candidate one piece of advice, what is the best single piece of advice you would tell a first-time challenger going up against an entrenched incumbent?
You have to run because it's the right thing to do, and you have to be convinced that it's the right thing to do no matter what comes. And someone told me this, and I'll tell them, if there's any way you can come to a consensus in your conscience to do something else besides run for office, do that. Running for office should be a last resort. That you're called to it. You have the support of your family and your community. And then if you're bought in that much, now you're ready to run for office.
Yeah, boy, that's great advice. I
Yeah,
love how you put that. That is so
that's
good. Thank
great.
you, David. Okay, Dorinda, we were talking earlier about voter fatigue before we started the podcast. Man, we're voting right now in the primary runoff. We just voted for municipals. Then in June, we're going to vote for the municipal runoffs. And then we got the general election coming up in November. Of course, we already voted in March, too. So we're going to vote at least 5 times this year. I mean, how do we solve the voter fatigue problem in Texas? What do we do?
That's one thing that I really do think that we need to look at is the voter fatigue is real. The volunteer fatigue is real. The precinct chair fatigue is real. And it costs cities and counties millions of dollars to keep doing all of these elections. So it would be great to make sure that we streamline these to where it's dates that actually make sense. And then you have the amount of staff that you need, because what you're talking about is I'd love to see 1 to 2 elections a year, maybe 3. But you have those, and then you will have to have more centers to open up to make sure that people are, being able to vote, because it's going to be a lot less. So that's what I want to see. And then the other thing, going back to one of the things that David talked about, is we have at our ready, we have a CRC, which is called the Candidate Resource Committee. And what that is, it's a really great tool that we have in the Republican Party, but not a lot of people know about it. And I want to make sure more and more people do know about it. And what it is last year they raised about 150,000 to give some dollars to candidates that have been approved by their counties and then sent to us, and then we distribute that money based on what the committee comes up with and what they all decide as a collective and how much money to give to that candidate. So what I want to see us do is have $1 million in there. I would like for us to help more candidates, because when people see that running for office is something that can be supported by the Republican Party, then maybe more extremely great candidates will come out to run as a Republican. But if they see they don't get anything, not support, not anything, it is pretty demoralizing. And we want to make sure that we get as many people out. And the other thing that I want to do is when it comes to local elections, because that is where you have the most amount of power, and that is where the power hits your front door. So what I want to do is make sure when it comes to our messaging that we talk about that local elections touch 60% of your tax dollar. And a lot of people don't know that. They just think they don't have the sexy because they're not on TV every day, and they're not something that Aunt Mirtha has that in common with us. So but it is more important than even your governor and your president. Now, don't tell Trump I said that, but but we know that those guys are the ones that actually hit our tax dollars, and they affect our community that we work so hard to protect. So those are the elections that I really want to make sure when it comes to the RPT that we get out the messaging to make sure people are paying attention to their local communities.
Awesome. So, David, I want to talk to you about getting out the vote. I mean, you did so well in your primary election. I believe you were leading, if I recall the math correctly. You're ahead of Dade Phelan. Then you got in the runoff and barely lost. What would you do differently or advise now for those that are trying to get the vote out, especially in a runoff? Because runoffs are so hard, I believe, to get people to vote 2 times for you, especially if you're a first-time challenger. What would you advise somebody as far as what they should do to get that vote out, especially the second time?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing that moved the needle the most was actually the block walking with volunteers who believed in conservative values. So I had so many incredible conservatives board buses, including yourself, and come down to walk in Southeast Texas and share the message of this is what a Republican stands for, and this is what your state rep is voting on, and that doesn't align. And so I would tell anyone that's new to politics, it is a lot of work. It's a lot. You're going to wear out shoes, but you're going to go talk to the voters because that shows accountability, and it reminds you and it reminds them that you work for them. These are not celebrities who get elected and who we have to take our hat off when they walk in the room and clap for them. That these are people that should be working for us and earning our vote every single day. And so I would tell new people, come in and look how you can serve, and then build a team, an excited, passionate, conservative team that will work with you to get out and meet people. And then I'll just follow up on Dorinda mentioned about how important local elections are, and she made a comment about Trump, and I think she was referring to when I was running against Phelan. The President Trump called me before we met in person, about a month or so before we met, and told me he was going to endorse me. And so they gave me no heads up about this. So, I'm just answering all my phone calls. And I was actually at a little pizza place having lunch, working on some quotes and emails, and the phone rings and I answer it. This is Donald J. Trump, and I'm hearing some good things about you, David. And I think I'm going to endorse you. And of course he did. A few minutes later, it comes out on Truth Social. But at the end, he says, "Now, David, just remember, your race is important, but my race is more important."
That sounds like Trump.
And so anyway, so his race is always
My race is huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. So that was a great story, but really, I mean, local elections, I agree with Dorinda, are so important and they get so overlooked.
Yeah, I'd like to get that phone call from Trump in 28. That'd be great.
I was
Or
I was
JD
walking
Vance.
around the pizza restaurant, didn't even realize it, and everyone's staring at me. I kept wanting to say, I'm talking to the president, And, of course, nobody's going to believe you at the Mellow Mushroom, but
Yeah. Wow, man, what an experience that was. That's incredible, man. That's
Yeah,
what
I
you're
wish
going to
he'd
tell your
call you
grandkids,
again.
David.
yes.
Oh, love
I
it.
wish he'd
Well,
call you
okay.
again.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so now I have to ask some of the tough questions. These are our, job interview questions. So just a couple of these. I'm not going to rake you over the coals too hard, but I got to be, objective and fair. So, Dorinda, why are you the best choice for this job? Why are you better than Abraham George? I guess I should say it like this. Why should we fire Abraham and hire you to be the CEO of our company?
Well, because I have a plan. I gave this plan a version of it whenever I first became vice chair. Nothing was ever done anything with it. So I put it aside. And after seeing what was going on and what wasn't going on, and many, many Texans across the state telling me to run for chair, I dusted that thing off, talked to David, and we put his ideas and kept mine, and we strengthened that plan. And it's found on reddertexas.com, REDDER, Texas spelled out TEXAS.com. And there it is. And there you will see what we have planned. I have all the way down to my hiring staff as to what I'm going to do. And so I am being very transparent as to what I'm going to do, but we have to have something that is well organized, that is also based in customer service, and service is supposed to be a joy. And I have always led and I have always built things with joy. I have, and there's some on the other side that is saying that that's not a good character trait for leadership. That is not true. I have done 2 nonprofits based on that, and I also built that club to over 500 in membership, and that is from having a joy, because our Republican principles are the most foundational principles that align with the Bible. When they are implemented the way that God would want them to be, then we are in line with what God wants for us and what he wants for everyone. So that's where my heart is, and that's where what my driving factor is to do God's will with our party, because our policies are more aligned with God than the Democrats. And so I've got to make sure that I give it all I can when it comes to November and comes to this precious state of ours, because we're Texans first, even before we're Americans. And so I've got to make sure that I keep a party together that can make sure that Texas stays strong.
So one more follow-up question, Dorinda, for you. Then David, I'm coming over to you. So, when I hear the different rhetoric among people in our party, the grassroots want a fighter for a leader, and the establishment wants a uniter. So, how do you strike a balance between being a fighter and a uniter, and which one would you describe yourself as?
I think I'm both, because I was able to have that club that I had, and I had both sides. The thing is when you have a good product, and I know I keep going back to that, but when you have a product that is bringing in the youth, that's able to keep our red gold gains and do more, and you have an RPT that answers your questions, that's on the phone with you, that does things that are outside of what we've ever done before, that's when you can bring all parties together. Right now, there is no structure, there is nothing there. So everybody's doing this all the time. And if you have a product that brings us together, then that's where we're going to be strong. But this, Patrick Henry said it best: united we stand, divided we will fall. And that is so true. And so we've got to make sure that we are united in the fact that we all want a strong Texas, and we know the plans that we have will do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Dorinda. David, I've got a job interview question for you, sir. What is a failure or a mistake that you've made in leadership, and what did you learn from it? And how would you, do it differently today that you're a more mature leader today?
Yeah, because I came into politics at such an early age as a precinct chair, then county chair, um, I came in somewhat too positive, I think, thinking that we're all on the same side. And what I did have to realize is you have to use discretion and understand that everybody has their angle. And so a lot of the people that had good intentions also had their lens over it. So one of the mistakes that I would say was being too trusting early on in politics. And so I've learned that I now trust people who are in the trenches fighting with me. Once they have skin in the game, and once they have stood up for conservative values, I trust that person. If it's all talk and there's not skin in the game, then to me it's just talk. And so that's kind of how I go about it. Um, in this race, let's just get very, very blunt. I endorsed Abraham when he first ran. And it was on the premise that we would close the primary election. Okay. I lost my election because of open primaries. Nobody wants to close the primary elections more than I do. We didn't elect Abraham to file a lawsuit. We elected him to close the primaries. When you hear him say, finish the job, let me finish the job, that means I didn't do the job you hired me for. The party has a bully pulpit to be able to use its influence to get action, and we're not using that. We're suing the Secretary of State who works for the governor who's paying for our convention. Tell me how this works. Okay. We need a party that is fighting for the grassroots to close the primaries using all the tools at our disposal. And if that's not happening, then we don't have skin in the game. You follow the money, see where things are that kind of leads you to connect the dots. But we need a chair like Dorinda who has skin in the game. And I think she would agree. It doesn't matter if it's one lawsuit, if we need to file 10 lawsuits, if we need to go through a legislative approach, we want to use all the tools at our disposal to close the primaries. Let's stop hanging all of our hope on one judge's decision and the resources of this state are fighting us, and they could drag this on for 10 years. And frankly, Brandon, we don't have 10 years to close the primaries. If we don't do it now, we lose Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask either one of you a follow up on that, on the primary thing. So, how much is this lawsuit costing us to sue Jane Nelson, Secretary of State, and how much more money will it cost us to win the lawsuit? Either one of you can take this question.
Well, we've spent 300,000 so far, and they're saying it could be in upwards of 1 million. But what happened is, and the lawsuit should have been filed the day after convention. That's what many attorneys have said to me. And we didn't. We waited 16 months. Why? I don't know. Now, Abraham will say that it's because he was wanting it to be done legislatively, but there were 3 bills that were about closed primaries that we didn't do any call to action. We didn't do anything to notify anyone. Those bills just got put aside. Whenever I talked to Abraham about it and said, why haven't we done anything? He said they're not going to make it out of calendars anyway. But that's not our role to say that that's not going to happen. It's our role to make sure that it gets to the grassroots so then they can electrify their team and they can get the phone calls made to the legislators to make sure that that bill got through. And it didn't. And so, they have tried to spin me as not being for closed primaries. I'm for closed primaries because that's what the delegates want. I'm for whatever the delegates come up with. But I am not for wasting money, spending time on a useless venture when they knew probably that it was not going to work the way that they designed it to. So we need to be more strategic, especially when it comes to RPT's money, because we've already spent 300,000, and I've been told it's going to be up to 1 million, and it could go on for years. But there's 17 other states that have done closed primaries or optional closed primaries, and it can be done. We're Texas. We can make things happen. We don't have to just go, and like David said, it doesn't have to be one tool that we use. We could use a whole string of arsenal that we have available.
Awesome. One more question for you, Dorinda, and then David, I'll give you the last question of the podcast. So, Dorinda, some of the things I've heard coming from the SRECs is that Abraham has bullied them or pushed his will through or gotten Trump on the phone or Monastery or whoever to call into SREC meetings. And we've got this federal overreach coming from the White House telling our state party what to do, how to vote. And there's some SRECs in the grassroots that are put out with this whole thing. So, the SRECs obviously run the party, and they're very representative of all the delegates that come to state convention. They're kind of a good cross section there. So if you, as the leader of the party, face resistance from the SRECs, how are you going to lead them? What's your leadership style going to look like?
So my leadership style is that just like you were saying, the SREC is the State Republican Executive Committee. They are a board of directors. They are who I answer to, who David answers to too. And so they have the voice of their people. So it's precinct chairs, county chairs, and then SREC. The SREC are voted by the delegates at convention, and those guys have the voice of their SD. And so, therefore, a chair should never intervene with that intimate relationship that they have with their voters, because that is what they were put to do and to be a part of, was the legislative priority process. And for me to intervene in that or to manipulate that situation is not something that I am acting as a chair to govern. I am there to govern, to guide, and to stand up for what they are working on, that the SREC has the voice of the people. I am not to be a top-down official. I am there to be bottom up, and that means respecting our SRECs. And one thing that I want to say about our SRECs that I've learned so much from them, because they are it's a huge group. It's 62 of them. With David and I, that'll be 64, because we are considered part of the SREC, even though we're chair and vice chair. But our SREC make up a broad spectrum of different cultures and different job experiences. And it's pretty amazing to see them in action because, you've got doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, CPAs, stay-at-home moms, you have teachers, retired teachers, you have all of it on that make up that group, and they are fascinating people, and they're strong, and they're really smart. And so, but they carry with them the heart of service, which is hurt. And I am not going to stand in the middle of that at all.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that area of the campaign. So, David, I'm going to give you the final parting thought here. Convention is 3 weeks away, and I think that our delegates need some encouragement because with allowing Dustin Burrows to be the keynote speaker, and I've even heard TLR is one of the breakfast sponsors, and we know that they fund all the incumbents that we can't stand, including the one that I'm running against, quite frankly, in 2028. Is all paid for by TLR money. There's delegates that are discouraged about coming to this convention thinking we're not getting anything done for the grassroots. Can you encourage the delegates? Can you speak a word of encouragement? Why should they come? Why should they book that hotel room and get their ticket and get down there? What are we going to accomplish?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I am having our fourth little baby is due in July. And so, we're doing this for our children, for the children yet to come, for our grandchildren. And the truth is, we have a great opportunity here. And right now, the establishment and the Austin elites are locking arms and shoulders to take over a grassroots party. But we have someone named Randall who is brave enough to run against all odds. And the truth is, this campaign has incredible momentum. And so just the endorsements you're seeing from the SREC, from the county chairs, from volunteers, delegates, people are ready to have their voices heard, to have someone in leadership that's listening and fighting for them. And this is our opportunity. And we always say this is the most important election, and it typically is because it's the one in front of us. But this is our opportunity to give the grassroots the Republican Party for the next 10 years. If we set this up right, we build a strong base of support all across the state where the grassroots really do control the party. It's going to take a long time for the lobbyists to get their fingers back into the party. And so this is an opportunity. This could reshape the state. And I know it's expensive. And unfortunately, they've made the gala $500 a ticket because they want to exclude the grassroots. But there's many conservative patriots who are coming to this convention. They're going to fight. They're going to sacrifice. And I just ask you, come and fight one more time. We can win. If we show up with passion and conviction, and we stand on our principles, we can and we will win. And this is such a winnable fight. We only lose if we do nothing. And so please, if you can make it, come to convention. It really does make a difference because it could affect primary races and legislation for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great word of encouragement, David. I really appreciate you encouraging all of the delegates. I will be there. I've already got my ticket purchased, my hotel room purchased, so I'm already planning on coming, of course, on a bus. I will be riding the Collin County bus because that's what I do. I'm the bus man, apparently. But Dorinda, David, I want to thank both of you so much for coming on to the Daniel Report, sharing your heart, sharing your vision. And thank you all for just stepping up to run. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of dedication, and so much effort to do what you guys are doing. And I know firsthand as a candidate myself what it's like to run a campaign. So I just want to say thank you for stepping into that ring and, praying for all that's running that, God will, we're going to pray. My prayer is this: Lord, let righteous leadership, let them take the seats of power, whoever that is. that's how I always pray. So, I'm praying that God will guide every candidate and will guide this race for you guys and guide our party, because we really need God's intervention. Just like we rededicated America to God this past weekend,
Yep.
we also need to rededicate our party, I believe, to the Lord as well, and see His will come to pass. So thank you guys so much for being on the program tonight. I want to put the website up for the GOP website, texasgop.org. If you go out there, you can find more information about the state convention. There's a link to sign up to get your tickets and to get your hotel room. I know there are some hotels that have already sold out, but there's other hotels in the area that are available. Of course, there's always the Airbnb options as well. Also want to put up the website for Dorinda and David. That was reddertexas.com, and that's 2 Ds. reddertexas.com. So go out there and do some, I always say, do your homework. Like any campaign, any race you're going to go vote for, do your homework, know who you're voting for. So go out to this website, learn more about these candidates. Also, each of these candidates have their own individual websites as well. Covey for Texas is another resource that you can go check out. Also, randallfortexas.com is another resource that you can check out. So please go and check out all of those websites. And then finally, don't forget to visit our website, danielnation.com/events, for upcoming events that we're doing at the Capitol or at the state convention or wherever we are going across the state and speaking or rallying the grassroots to do grassroots activism and get involved in creating righteous legislation. Check out our website for that information. So again, Dorinda and David, great to have you on the show tonight. God bless you guys.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you in 3 weeks. I wish you the very best, and bye-bye.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.